If you've had a loved one who's passed on, whether recently or even not so recently, it can really feel like you might be comforted by having a spiritual communication with that soul. If you believe in life after death, you know really there's no such thing as death. It's just a transition from the physical body. Well, today I'm going to share with you how to communicate with a loved one who has passed on in a way that is in your best interest and in that soul's best interest. This is really important information, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Communicate with Angels YouTube channel. My name is Melissa, and this channel is for you if you want to develop your spiritual abilities and trust your inner guidance. Please hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and hit the like button too if you really enjoy this video. I'd so appreciate it. So your loved one has passed on and you would like to be in touch with them spiritually. You'd like to have some communication with them. So I'm going to share with you today the principles that are really important to understand around this that could be greatly misunderstood. And so you know what is spiritually beneficial for you and for that soul, because I know that you do not want to do them any harm. And so although this can be a very vulnerable and challenging experience when you're going through grief, and I totally understand that is the case, it's still important to really be clear about the spiritual ethics of communicating with loved ones once they've passed on. You are energy. You are a soul. All of the people and animals here on planet Earth are energy and souls. And so when a person passes on, you can know that they have transitioned, but they are by no means dead. You can actually connect with them. You still can have a communication and a relationship with that soul. It just might not be in the way that you want it to be. If you are really grieving, you may want to feel that person close to you still. You miss them, right? Grieving is really missing the person and missing the connection that you had and the contract that you had that is now complete, and kind of getting used to that change, getting used to the void that is left when that person's energy is no longer in the physical. That's what grieving is, right? And if there is something about that person that you miss, so I know for me, when my dad died in 2006, I felt like he was a person that gave me unconditional love. And so it was really hard for me to get over the grief, because what I was really missing was the unconditional love that he gave me. And the lesson there was that I needed to give it to myself. I wasn't feeling it from others in the way that I would like. So I needed to start with giving it to myself. So if you have been grieving for a really long time and you're having trouble, lessening that experience of grief, see if you can identify what is the core of why you miss that person, and see if you can replace that energy in some way, whether it be to yourself or through another avenue, right? So I want to share with you a little bit about my experience. In 2006, my father passed away. It was very sudden, very unexpected. He died of a heart attack when he was driving to work, right? And I get a phone call one day. He lived in New Zealand and I lived in the United States at the time. And I got a phone call from my mother saying my dad is gone. And that was totally, totally shocking. However, there's definitely a part of me that wishes he was still in my life, because he was young. He was only 59 when he died. But I also am grateful for the experience and what unfolded in the way that it really gave me the knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is life after death, and that we can communicate with those souls, because I experienced it so deeply and so profoundly. I would say that this was the strongest communication or spiritual awakening kind of experience I have ever had, is when my dad died. And I think that was the case because on a soul level, my father and I had a strong affinity. We had been together in many other lifetimes previous to this, and so we already had a really strong spiritual bond. And so when he passed on, I was able to communicate with him. So the night that I found out that he had passed, I was hurriedly booking flights to New Zealand to go home for the funeral. And I had a flight booked for the next day, but I wasn't able to hop on a flight so quickly. So I was spending the evening at home, and I had an experience where I felt like somebody was knocking on the door. And I said, "Oh, I think it's my dad." I said, "Come in." I could see purple light sitting near the armchair that was close to the door in my house at the time. And I just stared at it, not knowing what to say, because I was in shock, I was in grief, but I could see it. And it lasted for about half a minute, and at one point I saw the outline of his face. It was just a flash, just that little confirmation that my brain needed to know that that was really Dad that I was seeing. But I just saw his energy. His energy was no longer connected with his physical body. And I heard his voice in my mind, as clear as day, say, "Okay, I'm going to go see Lois now." And Lois was his partner that he lived with at the time. So I take the long flight home. It takes 24 hours to get from US to New Zealand. And one of the first things that we did when I arrived home was my sisters and my mum and I went to see his body before he was cremated. And I remember stepping into that room and seeing the shell that was the physical body and immediately having a reaction, "That's not Dad," because it looked different. And then I could see again and feel again his energy in the room. And I remember, I'm a very visual person, I'm a visionary, so I remember seeing the body and seeing the energy and just looking back and forth between the two. And oh wow, I've just witnessed the separation of the soul and the body. When some souls pass on, they will leave very quickly, because remember, when you don't have a physical body, you don't belong around planet Earth. And so some souls, I remember my mother-in-law was this way. As soon as she passed, she went. My dad was not that way. I think because he was a little confused, it was very sudden and unexpected. He took some time to regroup, and so he stayed close to planet Earth for a good 3 weeks before then moving out. And so that is one of the reasons why I did have a communication with him. So if you feel like, wow, I really can't feel them around and that's upsetting you, that could actually be a good thing, right? See that from a different perspective, that soul is fully complete, they are fully regrouped, they have gone home to the universe with their angels. Remember, we are the ones that are visiting while we're here on planet Earth. Universe is the true home. So although we think that they're the ones that are leaving, they're actually going home and we're the ones that are away from home. So it's the opposite to the way that we really think about it. In the 48 hours after my dad died, I could hear his voice very clearly, like in my ear, as if he still was around. I could feel that his personality was the same. My dad had a very childlike, fun personality. And so I could hear his voice, I could hear his jokes, I could hear his little sayings, and the things that he wanted to share with me in order to move on and complete on planet Earth. And I remember the day of the funeral, and I could see him standing there just watching and appreciating all the people that came to the funeral. How did I perceive that? I did not try. I did not say, "Oh my gosh, I want to communicate." It really was just me being relaxed and receiving it and just noticing what was occurring. So I want to give you some tips right now if you are in this place of maybe wanting connection or, still in that grief and wondering how you can communicate with your loved one. Here's some things that you really need to keep in mind, okay? The first is that just because you want to communicate with them does not mean that they are able to communicate with you or that it's in their best interest to. Because remember, they have gone with their spirit guides. Their spirit guides don't just suddenly go away when they pass on. Their spirit guides go with them to that next transition. And so their spirit guides are really the ones that are working with them on that soul level, not you. So if it's not in that soul's best interest to kind of come back down to anchoring to planet Earth, they just will protect it and they won't allow that communication to come through. So there's an important regrouping phase that happens after passing on, and you don't want to interrupt that. So if you're in communication with your own angels, what you can do is just ask them, is it in my best interest to communicate right now? Because your angels and that soul's angels are really the ones that are going to keep this aligned and positive for everybody. Having said that though, if you have an affinity with that soul that's passed on, you have never lost them. You always have a connection. So although I don't hear my father communicating with me like that anymore, that was only soon after he'd passed. It has not been that clear and direct since, and that's a good thing, right? He's moved on and he's regrouped. And I do feel him come to visit from time to time, and I feel his presence, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But at any time, I can feel the affinity. This is a tune-in, a feeling, a connection. Even though you might not hear anything from them, you're not receiving communication, you can feel just, oh yes, we have that affinity, we're connected. No matter where he is out there in the universe, I have that soul connection with him, and that does not end. It will continue, at some point in the future. Maybe he reincarnates and I see him again this lifetime. Maybe I'll see him in a future lifetime. Maybe we connect on the other side. I don't know, but I think the comfort really comes in you've never lost that person. They are with you now. You don't have to wait till you die and go to heaven. You can always feel that affinity wherever you are. Remember, that doesn't mean that you're hearing them and communicating with them. It means you're feeling the connection. And that can be very, very comforting. So I want you to, practice feeling that. What can happen is that as long as their angels are with them, they can come back and visit. And my dad has a few times. Several times actually, but I mean, it's been 15 years since he passed, right? So this is not like an everyday occurrence by any means. At this point, there's maybe a year or two will go by where I don't feel from him. And then it was interesting during the quarantine when COVID first hit, I could feel him around a lot. And that was also when I was transitioning out of, getting divorced. So there was a lot going on for me, and I could feel that he was coming to visit and to support. Right? So if you are receiving direct communication, if the timing is right, and the angels are supporting it, then it's going to be like all the other spiritual communication that you're practicing. Your spiritual gifts, inner voice, inner pictures, inner knowing, inner feelings. So it's beneficial for you to keep developing your communication with your angels, developing your 4 intuitive gifts, and I have videos about that on this channel, so that you can receive that communication when they do want to communicate. Over time, the communication is going to be more energetic and less like a physical body type of communication. And sometimes when my dad visits me now, it's more like I can just feel his presence in the room, and he's just sending love, or he's making his presence known. Often he doesn't really have a specific message as such. It might just be a very simple kind of presence or comfort or visit or connection. And I always just appreciate that. I don't ever try to force anything or make it happen. I just receive it with gratitude. So remember, they don't belong around planet Earth if they don't have a physical body. So if you miss them and you want them to stay close, some people even say, okay, now my loved one is one of my guides, and so they're going to help me and they're always going to be with me. I think that is an error. You want to allow your loved one to be free, to continue on their spiritual journey, not to hang around with you. You have other angels that are supporting and backing you. Tune into them for support. Don't tune into a loved one or a friend that has passed, because you would actually be holding them back from their spiritual evolution if you do that. That is not their opportunity. That's just one of those unfortunate misunderstandings sort of in the New Age circles, that your loved one is now going to become one of your spirit guides. It's not the case. Your spirit guides are with you from even before you were born. They're master souls. They're not souls that have had physical bodies in this lifetime. It's a different kind of relationship. So remember, you can communicate with loved ones, but they are not helping and advising you like your angels are. It's a different kind of a relationship and connection. So with all of those principles in mind, now you can open yourself to communication with your loved ones if you would like to. But remember that if you try to control it or force it or want it to be a certain way, you're probably going to end up frustrated and maybe grieving even more, right? I had a friend whose husband died in a car accident, and she contacted a medium because she wanted to feel him. She didn't want to let him go. And it's understandable, right? I have compassion for that. But also what she told me was the mediumship reading actually got her more upset because she didn't get that, what she was seeking. She didn't get, him being back in her life, right? She just got somebody else telling her things that sort of, some of it resonated and some of it didn't. And it just sort of got her frustrated and more upset. So again, it's about allowing souls to be free, allowing them to be on their own journey. Yes, missing them. Yes, grieving them. Let it all flow through and be grateful for what you learned from the contract where you did have them physically in your life, and see what's next for you. I hope this is helpful. I know it's a touchy subject, but I'm blessing you who you're going through this. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll be very curious to hear about this one. And I do have a previous video I made that will kind of give you more guidance on this topic. It's called What Happens to Your Loved Ones When They Pass On. So I've linked that one right here if you'd like to go over there next. I'll see you there.